In this video, we will cover what is directives and what are different type of directives in Angular. So let's start the video.
Hello friends, welcome to our channel WaveTutorials and you are watching AngularJs full tutorial session. And also I request you to, if you have still not subscribed to our channel, then please subscribe to it and don't forget to click on that notification bell icon. So let's start with today's session.
Directives in Angular is used to change the appearance or behavior of the DOM element. And we have three types of directive in Angular. The first one is components, second is structural directives, and third one is attribute directives. So components, you already know that we have worked with components in Angular application which have a HTML template. So we will discuss about component in detail as well. Next one is structural directive, which change the DOM layout by adding or removing DOM elements. And third one is attribute directive, which change the appearance or behavior of an element, component, or another directive. So let's discuss about them one by one. Components are the most common of all three directives. Components are typically used to create UI widgets, and it is used to add behavior to an existing DOM element. Components is used to break up the application into smaller components, and you already know that we can use as many number of components in an AngularJS application. If you would like to know about component in detail, then please check the link in description. We have created a separate video on components, what are components, how we can add components, how to add multiple or nested components. So let's open Visual Studio and see how component and its template change the behavior of DOM element. Here I already created a project and which is already running on localhost 42, and you can see that whenever we create a new project in Angular, it comes with a default component which is the root component. So here you can see that this is the default component we have, whose name is app.component.html, and this is the source file which is linked with a URL and HTML template. So let's open it, HTML file, and you can see that whenever I type anything here like and when I save it, it will immediately shown on this view. This action is actually changing the behavior of DOM element. Using the same way, you can also apply classes to this text or to any of DOM element using this CSS class. Now let's move to the next directive, which is structural directive. Structural directive change the structure of the view and are responsible for HTML layout. They can shape or reshape the DOM structure by adding or removing or manipulating the element. We have few examples of structural directive in Angular like ngIf, ngFor, and ngSwitch. So let's open Visual Studio Code and see few examples of structural directives. So first of all, let's see ngIf directive, and for this we need to create a variable here which will instruct the ngIf directive whether to add or remove the element on DOM. So for this, let's create show div and pass a value like true. And now let's open our HTML page, and also let me close this Explorer. Let's create a div element here and set ngIf. The syntax of ngIf is the asterisk sign, ng and then I in uppercase and then f equal to, and set the variable show div. And here you can see that example of ngIf, and let me save all files. You can see that a new element div has been added. Now let me show you one thing, that what happened when I hide this div element. So here you can see that under the content div we have a div element which is displaying the text our example of if. Now if I set its value to false and save it, then you can see that under content we have nothing like any div which is using the ngIf structure directive. So here I would like to show you that using ngIf it actually add or remove the element from DOM based on the condition. So the same way, let's see the next example with ngFor, and also let's create a div element here, and the same way using the sign of asterisk with ngFor. Here F is in capital, and then set a variable let item. This is the name of the variable. You can choose any of your wish. Then the name of the object like stuff, and let's create this object stuff in our source code file. And for this, first of all, we have to create a variable stuff, variable of object type any. It's an array, and then set a blank array to it, and then in constructor we need to set few objects in this array. This dot stuff, let's set an id 1 and name mark. Let's create few more. Jack, John. Now we have a data of few persons here which we need to show using ngFor. So let's save it. We have created a object stuff, and let's now display the value of stuff using this ngFor. Actually ngFor repeats the div elements till we have all the elements in this stuff object. So for this, let's use interpolation and display id plus item dot id. Item is a current object, current single object from this array, and let's also display the name, and let's save it. And you can see that we have added the div elements based on the values and the objects in this array. Using the same way, we have a third structural directive which is ngSwitch. So let's create an example of ngSwitch as well. So for this, let's create a break element and create a div here where we need to use ngSwitch like ngSwitch and set a variable which will check the value like name of employee, and let's create a variable for this like name of employee and pass the value as mark. Now create a switch cases in this div element, and for this let's create again a div, and the syntax is ng switch case, and check if the value received in this variable is mark, then show, or you can say that add this div on DOM element with text as mark. And the same way, let's create another div. If the value received as John, then text should display as John, and for Jack the value should be welcome Jack. Also we have to write a default switch case, which is ngSwitch default, and it should be blank, and here invalid inputs. Also, if we are comparing the string value, then we have to write a single quote here, else it will treat this as a variable and look for a variable in our source code file. So let's save it, and you can see that here we are showing welcome mark text using this div element according to the case we received. So if I change it to John, then the next div which is connected with the John case will show, and if I pass any invalid input like XYZ, then the default case will executed and it will show invalid input. Actually, in our DOM element, it added this element right now and remove the previous one, any of based on our last selection. So these are the example of structured directives. We will discuss about them in detail with our next videos, and you can check the link in description. Now let's open the presentation slide and move to the next topic, which is attribute directives. Attribute directives are used as attributes of element. The attribute directives can change the appearance or behavior of a DOM element. These directives look like regular HTML attribute in template. The ngModel directive, which is used for two-way data binding, is an example of an attribute directive. Some of other attributes directive are listed below, which is ngStyle. It modifies the element behavior and appearance. And next one is ngClass. It changed the class attribute of element in DOM. So let's open Visual Studio Code and see a basic example of ngStyle and ngClass. So to check with ngStyle, first of all, let's create a div element here. And set a paragraph tag in between and pass ngStyle. ngStyle should be in a pair of square brackets, and set style here like, let's increase its font size and set its value to 20px. So let me close this console and let's save it. Sorry, let me add a text here. Let's save it again. And you can see that the current font size of this text is a little bit more than these existing styles. So using the same way, we can also use the next attribute directive, which is ngClass. So for this, we have to create a button and we will apply a class to it. So let's apply a class using ngClass and set its class value as, within the square brackets, we already created a class like button. Now close the button and give it a name ngClass. Let's save it. And you can see that the class is applied here on a button. So the same way, let's create another example. It's a different syntax of using this ngClass. So for this, we can use it like, if we are going to use more than one classes with ngClass in a single line, you can either use a method here or you can also use it in line like this button and set its value as true. And using the same way, you can also apply multiple classes to here, like class 2, and also set it true, because we have nothing any class created like class 2. But for now, let's save it. And you can see here that we can create a button with multiple classes within a curly brackets, and if I set its value to false, then only class 2 will be applied here, because right now we don't have any class 2 created. But you can see that it comes in a default button. So if you would like to know about in detail what is ngStyle, what is ngClasses, what are the multiple ways to use it, you can check our separate videos on ngStyle and ngClass. You can check the link in description. So these all are the directives in Angular, and in our next videos we will check a detailed video on ngIf, ngFor, ngStyle with different scenarios and with multiple options. We will also discuss about ngStyle and ngClass. So please watch all these videos and you can get the link in description. In this tutorial session, we have covered directives and type of directives in Angular. So if you have any query, please write a comment in comment box, or you can also write to me at wavetutorials@outlook.com. I also request you to, if you have still not subscribed to our channel, then please subscribe to it and please give a like to our video. My name is Naveen and thank you for watching this tutorial.